This exciting story begins in a very dense forest where many soldiers are gathered together. Now, at a short distance, we see a boy named Ivan, who is wearing very modern clothes. The thing is, Ivan is the son of a king, but some time ago, when the king felt that his son's life was in danger, he used his cost technique to safely send Ivan to the future. But now Ivan has discovered this entire technique, which is why he often travels back and forth between the past and the future with ease. Ivan brought many modern things from his time with him. Now we see Ivan in that forest, meeting several of his father's soldiers. But just as they were moving forward, they encountered a dangerous creature. This creature didn't even have a body, it only had a circular head. At Ivan's urging, all the soldiers began to attack this creature and tossed it around. Finally, a brave soldier named Finish managed to capture the creature in a piece of cloth so they could take it to the palace. Before long, they all arrived in the king's realm. Inside the kingdom, we see a little girl who had stolen an apple from the basket of a lady named Omega. She was eating it in a corner because she was very hungry. As the little girl entered the forest, she saw a very bright flower that seemed to be attracting her. As she reached out to touch the flower, she pricked herself on its thorn. But at that moment, Omega, the lady whose basket the little girl had stolen from, appeared. Omega was concerned and tried to help the little girl. However, when Omega saw the bright flower, she couldn't resist and went to pick it, also pricking herself on its thorn. But now, somehow, Omega took the flower and the child and went back home. We then see Ivan entering his home. Notably, Ivan brought so many modern things from the future that he had turned his entire house into a very modern one. There was everything from washing machines to all kinds of household items, which had not even been developed in this time. This means that even in such a distant past, Ivan was living in a modern way. Suddenly, a soldier destroyed the generator. When Ivan went to see, the soldier said that he thought it was a demon, so he had eliminated the demon. Ivan was extremely angry about this because, without electricity, they had to rely on that generator, and now it was broken because of that foolish soldier. Ivan was stressed about how he would survive in this place. He should have stayed in the future. Now we see Omega, the lady who had brought the little girl home. When asked, the little girl introduced herself as Becky. But Omega noticed that Becky had developed black marks all over her body, and similar marks were appearing on her own body, which were making her quite ill. This must have been caused by that dangerous flower they had pricked themselves on. Now we see Ivan, who opens a portal using his father's magical sword. This portal led to the future, which he used to travel back and forth. Ivan quickly went to a supermarket in the future and gathered all the necessary items. He even bought a generator. Once he had collected everything he needed, he returned to his timeline using the portal. He enjoyed playing this game of jumping between the future and the past, but little did Ivan know that this would eventually become his trouble. Now we see Omega and Becky going to an old lady for treatment. The old lady examined Omega and Becky closely to see what was happening to them. Finally, she said that this girl was completely cursed and surrounded by demonic powers. The only remedy was to kill the girl. However, Omega did not want to do any of this, so she took Becky and moved away from there. While walking, they somehow ended up at the spot where they had seen the shining flower. As they moved a little further, many branches of trees activated and trapped them. Omega and Becky tried to escape, but they were completely stuck. The scene then faded to black. Now we see a grand competition being announced in the king's kingdom. People from all over would come to participate in this competition for the prize money, and the winner would receive significant rewards from the king. That's why participants of all kinds entered the competition. Among them was Finish, the brave soldier, who was consistently overcoming all obstacles and moving ahead. Everyone believed that no one but Finish would win the entire competition. Finish even fought against a small, round creature that harmed others, but he easily defeated it. Finish then declared that he wanted to challenge the king's daughter, Ivan, to complete all the tasks in the competition and fight him. Meanwhile, we see Ivan trying to create a portal with his father's sword, but the power of that magical sword had completely drained. Because of this, he couldn't create the magical portal that would take him to the future. Ivan had used the sword so much that all its energy was gone, and it could not create any portal for him at that moment, meaning Ivan's ability to go to the future was entirely cut off. Due to the pressure, Ivan had to participate in the competition. Everyone was cheering for him because he was the king's son, and as the king's son, he was the most significant member there. Ivan started playing the competition and was performing quite well, advancing impressively as if he had trained for it. He was perfectly executing everything. But then, suddenly, two dark witches appeared and said to him, "Give us your father's magical sword, we want to use its powers." After a while, it became clear that these two witches were none other than Omega and Becky, who had gone into the forest last time and, for some unknown reason, had transformed into witches. Both witches possessed dark energies that they were using against the nearby soldiers, and now they needed Ivan's father's magical sword at any cost. Omega used her dark energy and killed many soldiers. Meanwhile, Becky was trying to keep the magical sword for herself. Becky had magically transformed herself into a bird and was flying inside the palace to grab the powerful sword. But when Ivan saw this, he took out his smartphone and struck her with it, causing Becky to get hurt and drop the sword. Ivan was quite pleased that his aim had improved significantly. Before long, Ivan's father arrived, and he started fighting Omega's soldiers with the sword. However, the energy of the sword had run out, so it was functioning like a regular sword. This was why the king handed the sword back to his son, Ivan, and told him to protect it because one day its powers might return. The king, along with Ivan, Belisa, and the sorceress, began to run away because they could not fight the witches' army in this situation. But the soldiers controlled by the witches were still pursuing them, intent on capturing them and taking them to the witches. To save them, the sorceress played a tune that summoned a moving house, which they hoped to use to escape. When the soldiers controlled by the witches reached that spot, they saw that Ivan and his friends had boarded the house and were floating away on the water. But the actual truth was quite different because Ivan and his friends had never entered that house. It was just a ruse to mislead the soldiers. In reality, Ivan, Belisa, his father, and the sorceress were hiding under a tree, where they were safe. Ivan also had the round creature with him, which was very scared. Now, Ivan and the others waited for the soldiers to leave. Ivan asked the sorceress why the witches were after the sword and where they had gotten their powers from. The sorceress then began to tell the story of a very old wizard who had lived there many years ago. That wizard possessed such creative powers that he could bring anything to life and completely transform it into a living being. He had a student named Koshi, who followed all his teachings. But over time, the wizard began to feel that he was growing old and that there would come a time when he would die. Therefore, the wizard decided to use his energy to take a sword and began to infuse it with many powers. This sword was none other than the one that Ivan possessed. To make himself immortal, the wizard planned to perform a ritual and add a magical diamond to the sword. After doing all this, the wizard would become immortal and could never die. However, just as he was completing the ritual, his student Koshi dropped a large stone on his own master to seize the sword. As a result, the old wizard was trapped under the stone. Although he was not dead yet, he gradually transformed into a demon because the feeling of revenge had awakened within him. He now wanted that sword at any cost, which Koshi had taken away at that time. Now we see the two witches who were trying to destroy the moving house, believing that Ivan and his friends were inside. However, when Becky went inside the house, she found no one there, which made them realize they had been tricked. Omega ordered to burn the house to ashes, but just before she could do so, another moving house appeared, which freed the first house and they started to escape. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the forest. Now we see Ivan and his friends, when suddenly a strange creature appeared among them. He was a water-dwelling prince who told them that if they wanted to kill the demonic wizard, they needed to go to Dead Land. Only after reaching there would they find a way to defeat him. The prince knew the way to get there, so he guided them to a rock. Here, they had to pull some chains upwards by any means. Finus was present, bravely pulling one chain. However, when he went to pull the second chain, he didn't have enough power to even budge it. Ivan was completely exhausted after witnessing all of this. After seeing everything, the sorceress took out some small fruits and ate them. As soon as she consumed the fruits, she gained a lot of powers and began to pull the second chain, pushing Ivan aside. In no time, both chains were completely pulled, and suddenly a massive structure emerged from the water. This structure was none other than the whale of the water-dwelling prince, which had been there all along. Ivan and everyone else climbed onto the whale, and at the prince's command, the whale began to fly, swiftly taking Ivan and his friends to Dead Land. They couldn't believe that a whale could fly so high, but it was all happening through magic. During the journey, Ivan took some of the sorceress's fruits, which made her powerful, and upon reaching Dead Land, he ate some of those fruits as well. As soon as Ivan ate the fruits, he gained immense powers and began throwing large stones effortlessly. Ivan was using all his powers very effectively, even showing off to his soldiers. Now they moved away from the icy area and encountered a mountain that could speak, meaning that it was completely cursed and had a cave leading inside. The mountain told Ivan and his friends that it would only allow those who answered its 3 questions correctly to enter. If their answers were wrong, no one would be allowed inside. But Ivan was very clever. He managed to confuse the mountain and forced it to ask 3 questions about which he already knew the answers. After answering the 3 questions, Ivan said, "I have completed your task, and I won't say anything more to you." The cursed mountain realized that Ivan had tricked it, but it still acknowledged that he had answered the 3 questions correctly. Therefore, the mountain, pleased with Ivan, gives him a magical stone and says that he can use it to bring any dead person back to life. Ivan is very happy and now heads inside the mountain with the stone. Inside, he finds a very large area that is completely cursed, but Ivan is still unaware of this fact. As soon as he enters, he meets his father. Ivan is completely confused about how his father ended up there. His father explains that the last time Ivan left him and ran away, those dangerous witches killed him, and now after dying, he has arrived in Deadland, the realm of the dead. Ivan, very emotional, tells his father that he has a stone that can bring the dead back to life, so he should use it to come back. Ivan's father takes the stone from him, and standing right beside him is Koshi, who has grown quite a bit. Koshi had worked at the king's palace from the beginning, and now Ivan's father tells Koshi to take everyone away. Ivan and Koshi emerge from the cave and start heading toward their kingdom with everyone. However, they come across a very long river that seems quite difficult to cross. Just then, Ivan eats the fruits from the sorceress, which restore his powers. Using his powers, he cuts down a large tree, causing it to fall. Everyone is shocked to see Ivan's powers, but the sorceress knows exactly how he is able to do all this. Now, the sorceress asks Koshi to explain how to defeat the evil sorcerer. Koshi replies that he doesn't remember anything and doesn't know how he defeated him or what the outcome was. At that moment, the sorceress hits Koshi on the head from behind, and many of his memories come rushing back. He then says that there is only one way to kill the evil sorcerer. Many years ago, when he dropped the sorcerer on a large stone, the sorcerer's soul entered that stone. Therefore, if that stone is destroyed, the evil sorcerer will also be killed. But there was a twist, that stone could only be destroyed by the same sword that Ivan currently possessed. Now Ivan was telling Belisa that due to repeated use, the powers of this sword had completely diminished, so there was not a single ounce of power left in it. Belisa became quite angry and informed the rest of the team members as well. For the first time, Ivan felt bad that he had used the sword so much that its powers had depleted. So, he went into the forest to try and regain his powers. He attempted to increase his powers by repeatedly chopping down trees with the sword, but it was of no use, the sword had become completely normal. When Ivan threw the sword down in anger, it started to absorb all the energy from the ground. Shortly after, the sword returned to its normal form and gained a lot of energy, but he didn't want to tell anyone about it. He picked up his powerful sword and ate a few of the fruits, which restored a significant amount of power within him. He placed the sword under a large stone where no one could reach it. All of Ivan's friends decided to spend the night there and fell asleep. A soldier named Finus was on guard to ensure that no stranger could come and harm them. However, after a short while, Finus was suddenly struck by an arrow shot by Becky, indicating that Becky and her soldiers had found their location. They quickly came and began to attack everyone. So, Ivan, Belisa, the sorceress, and the small dangerous creature started fighting against them. Becky needed that sword at any cost and was ready to eliminate anyone who stood in her way. Becky went completely out of control. Everyone was fighting well against Becky's soldiers, but just as Ivan was about to lift the stone to retrieve his magical sword, the effect of the fruits wore off, causing the stone to fall back down. Ivan thought that if he ate more fruits, he would become more powerful, but all the fruits had already been exhausted. And now, all of this was confirmed to the sorceress, who was telling the rest of the teammates, making everyone realize that the powers Ivan had were due to that fruit. Since Ivan couldn't pull out the sword, he had become anxious, but for now, they were all weakening in front of Becky's soldiers. Therefore, the sorceress took everyone away from that place. However, Becky didn't pursue them because she had already obtained what she wanted, the sorcerer's sword was in her hands. She decided that instead of giving the sorcerer's sword to Omega, she would use it for herself and perform all the rituals to become immortal. Now, we see Belisa slapping Ivan and saying, "Why did you do all this? You have been deceiving everyone from the start. But now we should not fight among ourselves." After that, Belisa began to move forward with all her companions through the rocky terrain. Ivan also realized his mistake and followed behind them. However, shortly after moving ahead, Ivan and the small creature fell down and couldn't find a way out from that place. Belisa and the other teammates were quite angry with Ivan, so they didn't come back to find him. Now, with no other option, Ivan and the small creature went back toward the forest. Ivan saw that the cover of the powerful sword was there, meaning the two witches had taken it. Determined, he decided that he would get that sword back no matter what. Meanwhile, we see an owl, which is none other than Becky, flying away with the magical sword. Just then, Omega appeared above her, having figured out her intentions. She realized that Becky was deceiving her and using the sword for herself. So, Omega attacked Becky, causing the sword, which had been transformed into an owl, to fall into the forest. Now both of them quickly descended and confronted each other. Becky's intentions were clear on her face. She wanted to use the sword to become immortal. Omega was warning Becky that she shouldn't resort to such deceit. Becky, however, did not listen to the sorceress, so Omega cast her dark magic on her. As a result of this black magic, Becky lost her eyesight, just like Omega had done with the soldiers. Perhaps now Becky would obey Omega's orders. Meanwhile, we see a very large monster in the forest that had acquired the magical sword. It had even participated in the competition organized in the king's kingdom but had returned to the forest due to the people's opposition. As the monster moved forward with the sword, Ivan spotted it in its hand. Since he had that small creature with him, the big monster gave the sword to Ivan in exchange for the small creature. With the magical sword, Ivan directly returned to his kingdom. He felt very confident after obtaining the sword. However, Omega had cast her dark magic on all the soldiers in the kingdom, ordering them to kill Ivan and his friends. Ivan did his best, fighting forward with the help of the sword. Soon, all of Ivan's companions arrived to help him fight against the soldiers. They all fought together as a team, which looked impressive. Now, Ivan was informed that destroying the large stone in front of them would kill the sorcerer. Without wasting any time, Ivan took the sorcerer's sword and went to cut the stone. He managed to break the stone completely, but it had no effect on the sorcerer. Ivan then asked Koshi which stone would actually kill the sorcerer if cut. Koshi pointed to another stone with his hand, but from behind, a soldier beheaded Koshi. Ivan was deeply saddened but still asked Koshi's head what he should do. However, it might have been too late. As much as Ivan knew, he went toward the other stone to destroy it with the sword. While Ivan's entire team was fighting the soldiers, shortly after, Koshi reattached his head to his body and fully healed. Omega had also arrived at that place, using her dark powers to attack Koshi. Now, Koshi's head hit the wall hard, causing all his memories to return. But he had made a mistake. He was trying to warn Ivan that destroying the stone would not kill the sorcerer but rather make him live forever. However, it was probably too late, as Ivan broke the stone. As soon as the stone shattered, the curse that had been placed on it was also broken, and the evil sorcerer emerged from within. His size resembled that of a monster, and he grabbed Ivan, throwing him away and trying to kill him. Everyone was shocked and terrified upon seeing the evil sorcerer. Koshi stepped up in front of the monster and said, "Leave the others alone, your enmity is with me, so fight me." But the evil sorcerer began to pull everyone present underground using his branches. He buried them completely in the earth. No one could withstand the power of that evil sorcerer. Koshi informed them that their powers came from the ground, as the earth contained energies that provided for those in need. Ivan would have to recognize his own powers. Ivan emerged from his visions, but just as he was about to be buried, he broke free from the branches and escaped. We saw that Ivan's body was gathering a lot of energy from underground, and he became significantly stronger. Ivan quickly broke free and uprooted the evil king, throwing him away. For the first time, the evil sorcerer felt that he had met someone who could match him, but he had no idea that Ivan had become even stronger than him. Ivan began to damage him while taking the magical sword, creating a portal around the evil sorcerer that transported them to the future. They arrived in the 21st century. Ivan had brought him here because in this place, the evil king would not find soil. There were concrete roads, which would be impossible to dig, and if the sorcerer did not remain in contact with the earth for too long, he could be killed. The evil sorcerer tried to break the road, but it crumbled beneath him. In the basement, he still couldn't find any soil, so after a long time without contact with the earth, the evil sorcerer's entire body began to burn. Before long, that evil sorcerer was finished, and now that his curse was lifted, all of Ivan's friends in the past were freed. Finish, as if the sorceress had brought him back to life, helped everyone. Ivan had successfully averted a significant danger, and all the soldiers were now free. Omega's magic also came to an end, but she managed to escape at the right moment. Ivan reached that place, and when Belisa saw him, she was very happy. Without delay, he proposed to Belisa and began kissing her, meaning he had fixed everything. With that, our adventurous story comes to an end.